Almonds, small seeds surrounded by a thin brown shell and a light, crunchy pulp, have earned a privileged place in the world of healthy eating. And this is no accident. In recent years, they have gone from being just a decorative ingredient in sophisticated desserts or an appetizer at parties to becoming protagonists in diets, functional eating plans, and nutritional trends around the world. The popularity of almonds is strongly linked to the growing demand for more natural, nutrient-rich foods with functional properties that promote not only satiety but also well-being, metabolic health, and disease prevention. What was once considered a luxury or an inaccessible item is now found on supermarket shelves, at organic markets, in supplement stores, and even in coffee shops that offer plant-based milks as an alternative to cow's milk. Almonds are not only accompanying this change in eating behavior, they are leading it. Behind this success is a powerful combination of nutritional and cultural factors. Nutritionally, almonds are true health powerhouses, rich in good fats, especially monounsaturated fats, the same found in olive oil. They help balance blood cholesterol levels, protecting the heart and contributing to the prevention of cardiovascular disease. In addition, they contain a significant amount of vitamin E, a natural antioxidant that acts against free radicals, combating premature cell aging. Their fiber content is also considerable, which aids intestinal health and promotes satiety, a key point in weight control diets. The protein present in almonds cannot be ignored, especially by those who follow a vegetarian or vegan diet and seek alternative sources of vegetable protein. They also contain essential minerals such as magnesium, calcium, potassium, and zinc, all of which are fundamental for vital body functions such as muscle contraction, nerve conduction, and bone strengthening. But it is not only in the nutritional field that almonds stand out. Culturally, they carry an aura of tradition and sophistication. Since ancient times, Mediterranean peoples have cultivated almond trees and recognized their value as food and symbol. In ancient Egypt, almonds were considered a gift fit for kings and were often placed in tombs as offerings. In the Greco-Roman world, they were associated with fertility and love, and even then, there were records of their medicinal use. Later, during the Middle Ages, they were incorporated into various recipes and gained popularity as a noble ingredient among the European nobility. Over time, almonds migrated to different regions of the world, adapting to new palates and climates, until they established themselves as a global commodity, with special emphasis on countries such as the United States, Spain, and Australia, which are currently major producers of the fruit. Another factor that has boosted the popularity of almonds is their culinary versatility. They can be eaten raw, roasted, in slivers, in flour form, as a paste, the famous almond butter, oil, or vegetable milk. Each format meets a specific need, whether for people with dietary restrictions, such as lactose intolerance, or for athletes looking for energy-packed, nutritious snacks. Almond milk, for example, has become a widely consumed alternative for those seeking to avoid animal milk products, whether for ethical, environmental, or health reasons. Almond flour, on the other hand, has won over the palates of people who follow a low-carb or ketogenic diet, serving as a base for recipes for breads, cakes, pies, and pancakes that avoid the use of refined wheat flour. In addition, social media and digital influencers play a key role in popularizing almonds. In an increasingly visual world where what we eat is often shared online, almonds have also gained ground for their aesthetics. Beautiful, elegant, with a clean and natural appearance, they fit perfectly into the feed of those who promote a healthy lifestyle. They are constantly featured in breakfast bowls, accompanied by fruit and yogurt, in energy smoothies, or as quick snacks between meals. This constant presence reinforces the positive image of the food and helps to consolidate it in the collective imagination as a smart, modern, and beneficial choice. However, it is important to note that this growing popularity also carries some pitfalls, and this is where critical reflection begins. Many people, upon realizing the numerous benefits of almonds, start consuming them uncontrollably without considering aspects such as portion size, preparation method, or digestive impact. In addition, the marketing surrounding this food does not always highlight the precautions that should be taken regarding its daily consumption. For example, there is a common mistake that almost everyone makes when eating almonds, which can compromise the very benefits sought by including them in the diet. This mistake, although often ignored or unknown, has real implications for how the body digests and utilizes the nutrients in almonds. What's more, this habit is even present among people who consider themselves well-informed about healthy eating. Even though almonds are on almost every healthy food list, and despite all the fame they have gained in recent decades, there is one fundamental detail that most people ignore, and which unfortunately can compromise many of the benefits that this incredible food has to offer. The most common common mistake when consuming almonds is how they are eaten raw and without soaking. This seems harmless, even trivial. After all, we often associate the idea of raw with something more natural, more pure. And indeed, when you look at a raw, unsalted almond straight out of the package, there is no indication that anything could be wrong. However, behind this simplicity lies a complex biochemical dynamic that directly interferes with digestion, nutrient absorption, and even the functioning of the immune system. Few people know this, but raw almonds contain substances called anti-nutrients, especially phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors, which, although natural, can interfere with the assimilation of minerals and hinder the body's work during the digestive process. Phytic acid, found in the skin of almonds, acts as a defense mechanism for the plant itself. In its original function, it protects the seed from predators and also prevents it from germinating prematurely, ensuring that only under the best conditions of humidity and temperature does the almond become a new plant. However, within the human body, this same phytic acid acts in an undesirable way. It binds to minerals such as iron, zinc, calcium, and magnesium, forming insoluble complexes that the body cannot absorb. In other words, even though almonds are rich in these nutrients, when eaten raw and without proper preparation, a significant portion of these minerals is simply discarded without being utilized. This is especially relevant for people who already have nutritional deficiencies, such as iron or calcium deficiency, or who follow vegetarian diets, where oil seeds are often one of the main sources of micronutrients. In addition, enzyme inhibitors present in raw almonds also pose a significant challenge to the digestive system. These substances interfere with the action of enzymes such as trypsin and amylase, making it difficult to break down proteins and carbohydrates in the gastrointestinal tract. The result? Slower digestion, bloating, gas, abdominal discomfort, and in some cases, even inflammatory reactions in more sensitive people. And the most surprising thing is that many of these symptoms are attributed to other causes, such as intolerances or food combinations, without identifying the real culprit: the recurrent consumption of raw almonds without any type of preparation to neutralize these anti-nutrients. And then the inevitable question arises, what is the right way to consume almonds? The answer begins with a simple, ancient, and often forgotten gesture: soak them. Yes, the simple act of placing almonds in a container with filtered water for about 8 to 12 hours, usually overnight, is enough to start the process of neutralizing phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors. By absorbing water, the almond understands that it is in an environment conducive to germination and begins to awaken. This biological awakening activates natural enzymes that inhibit the action of anti-nutritional compounds and make their nutrients more bioavailable, that is, easier for the body to absorb. The texture changes. The almond becomes softer, tastier, and its skin comes off more easily. The flavor also becomes milder, and digestion becomes incomparably lighter. In other words, hydrating almonds is returning the seed to its living nature, transforming a merely healthy food into a functional, regenerative, and deeply beneficial food. Unfortunately, this simple practice is still not widespread. Most almond packages sold in supermarkets do not provide any guidance on this. In influencer content and popular nutrition tips, the focus is usually on counting calories, highlighting benefits, or suggesting practical recipes, but rarely is there any mention of how to consume the food in a physiologically correct way. And so, even with the best of intentions, many people consume almonds daily believing they are doing the best for their health, but without realizing it, they end up compromising their own nutrient absorption and overloading their digestive system. It is the kind of mistake that is silent, persistent, and difficult to detect, precisely because it seems harmless. Another common mistake is related to quantity. Because they are delicious, crunchy, and convenient, almonds are easy to overeat. A handful here, another there, a little more in a salad, some almond milk with breakfast, and before you know it, your daily consumption exceeds healthy limits. Although rich in nutrients, almonds are also high in calories and fat, and excess consumption, especially in restricted or sedentary diets, can lead to weight gain, digestive disorders, or even lipid metabolism imbalances. According to nutritionists, the ideal is to consume around 20 to 30 grams per day, equivalent to a medium handful. And even within this moderate portion, it is best to always prioritize almonds that have been previously hydrated and, if possible, lightly dried in the oven at a low temperature to preserve their natural oils without causing oxidation. It is curious to observe how the food industry has taken advantage of this popularity to launch almond-based products that, despite bearing the noble name on the label, are often highly processed, with added preservatives, sugars, stabilizers, and other chemical additives. Industrialized almond milks, for example, usually contain less than 5% of the oil seed in their composition. The rest is water, thickeners, and artificial flavorings. This reinforces the importance of looking carefully not only at the food itself, but also at its origin, how it is prepared, and above all, its role in our daily diet. As we delve deeper into this topic, it becomes clear that eating well is not just a matter of choosing good foods, but also of understanding the processes biases behind each choice. The most common mistake when eating almonds is not the food itself, but a lack of knowledge. And the more we understand this lack of knowledge, the closer we get to conscious eating, which respects the nature of food and the functioning of the body. But there is still much more to explore when it comes to almonds, from the myths surrounding their consumption to modern practices that attempt to improve their nutritional profile, but do not always deliver what they promise. When chewing a raw almond, with its shell intact and firm texture, few people imagine the true journey that this small food will take inside the body. What appears to be a healthy gesture, eating a handful of almonds in the middle of the afternoon, can, depending on how this food was prepared or neglected, trigger a series of complex, silent, and cumulative physiological reactions. The mistake of eating raw, unactivated almonds, i.e., without soaking them to reduce their anti-nutrients, can trigger subtle effects that go unnoticed in everyday life, but over time significantly impact digestive health, nutrient absorption, and even the body's inflammatory balance. The first stage of this process takes place in the digestive system. As soon as the almonds reach the stomach, the body begins to break down their components: proteins, fats, fiber, and micronutrients. However, when these seeds have not been previously hydrated, the phytic acid that remains in their structure begins to act as a mineral sequestrant. It chemically binds to iron, zinc, calcium, and magnesium, forming insoluble compounds that the human intestine cannot absorb. This means that even when eating a food naturally rich in these nutrients, much of them ends up being eliminated in the feces without ever entering the bloodstream. What is most concerning is that this interference with absorption is not limited to almonds themselves. Phytic acid can also affect the assimilation of nutrients present in other foods eaten together or in subsequent meals. In other words, it acts as a kind of silent mineral thief, causing nutritional deficiencies that accumulate over time, especially in people who already have limited diets or health conditions that require higher mineral intake. The most immediate impact, however, is usually felt in digestion. Raw almonds contain natural inhibitors of digestive enzymes such as trypsin and pepsin, which make it difficult to break down proteins in the stomach and small intestine. The result is a slower, less efficient digestive process, often accompanied by uncomfortable symptoms: abdominal bloating, a feeling of heaviness, gas, and even intestinal cramps. For many people, these signs are confused with food intolerances or attributed to everyday stress, but the real source may lie in the routine consumption of poorly prepared almonds. Over time, this compromised digestion leads to the formation of poorly digested residues in the intestine, creating an environment conducive to unwanted bacterial fermentation, imbalances in the microbiota, and possible intestinal hyperpermeability, the so-called leaky gut, a condition that has been linked to a range of problems, from chronic inflammation to autoimmune disorders. And the effects don't stop there. Slow digestion and poorly processed waste also overload the liver, a central organ in the metabolism of nutrients and the neutralization of toxins. When the liver has to deal with a constant excess of anti-nutritional compounds and partially digested proteins, its efficiency decreases. This can affect bile production, hormone regulation, and even the body's natural detoxification. The immune system is also affected, as about 70% of immune cells are located in the gut. When there is constant irritation of the intestinal mucosa caused by poorly digested foods and inflammatory compounds, the immune system goes into a state of continuous alert. This state of low-grade inflammation, while often not causing obvious symptoms at first, is one of the main triggers for immune imbalances, food allergies, and, in more extreme cases, autoimmune conditions. Another important point to consider is how the body handles the lipids, fats, present in almonds. When properly prepared, almonds offer monounsaturated fatty acids that are highly beneficial for cardiovascular and brain health. However, if poorly digested, these good fats may not be properly absorbed and may oxidize more easily in the gastrointestinal tract, generating inflammatory byproducts. This is particularly concerning for people with metabolic syndromes such as insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, or hypertension, who seek almonds as an ally to improve their health. In other words, what would be a natural remedy without proper preparation can become an aggravating factor. There is also an indirect neurological impact. Little is said about the connection between the gut and the brain, but this connection, known as the gut-brain axis, is a two-way street that is constantly communicated. When the gut is extremely inflamed, unbalanced, and overloaded by incomplete digestion and mineral deficiencies, this directly affects the production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, which is responsible for feelings of well-being. In the long term, this imbalance can contribute to mental fatigue, irritability, anxiety, and even mild depression. And look, all this from a mistake that at first glance seems insignificant significant, eating raw almonds without activating them. Of course, the human body is resilient, and not everyone will feel the effects intensely and immediately, but it is precisely this subtlety that makes the mistake so persistent. It does not cause an acute crisis, it does not trigger a clear alarm, it does not impose an urgency. On the contrary, it creeps into your routine discreetly, camouflaged as a healthy habit, while slowly undermining the processes of absorption, digestion, and immunity. And the more it goes unnoticed, the more space it gains to create imbalances that are not intuitively associated with a handful of crunchy seeds in your afternoon snack. But the body has its own language, a delicate yet firm way of warning us when something is not flowing smooth. These signs often appear as subtle discomfort, a lack of energy, or irritation, with no apparent cause. Other times, they are more persistent symptoms, such as constipation, bloating, or unexplained fatigue, or even a blood test that points to a mineral deficiency. Even in an apparently balanced diet, the body speaks, and it is up to us to listen to it with attention, presence, and a willingness to go beyond appearances. That is why, when reflecting on the impacts of this common mistake, we need to make room for another dimension of food: applied knowledge, intentional preparation, and respect for the natural cycles of each food. Because only then can we transform each meal into a gesture of healing, and each food choice into a link that reconnects us with our vitality. And although all of this begins with the simple decision to prepare the almonds we consume better, there is still a crucial point to be explored. What, after all, is the right way to consume almonds to extract their full nutritional potential without compromising digestive health? It is precisely this question that leads us to the next point. Knowing what to eat is important, but understanding how to eat is what transforms an ordinary food into a true healing agent. When we talk about almonds, this noble seed, rich in nutrients and so prevalent in modern diets, it is essential to recognize that their nutritional power is only truly accessible to the body when they are prepared in the right way. And here we enter a field that goes beyond superficial nutrition, which is limited to counting calories or simply including trendy foods in our routine. We enter the realm of living food, of respect for its biological nature and our ability to interact with it consciously. Eating almonds the right way means activating their full potential, neutralizing their natural defense mechanisms such as phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors, and transforming them into a truly bioavailable food that is able to be fully utilized by the human body. The first step in this process is undoubtedly hydration, an ancient, simple, almost instinctive gesture. Soaking almonds in filtered water for a few hours has a profound impact on the final quality of the food. When they come into contact with water, the almonds begin a pre-germination process. This means that their defense mechanisms are deactivated and internal enzymes are activated, making the nutrients easier to digest and absorb. This process not only significantly reduces phytic acid levels, but also helps neutralize enzyme inhibitors that interfere with digestion. Ideally, they should be left submerged for 8 to 12 hours in a glass or ceramic container, always with enough water to cover all the almonds and a little extra, as they will absorb some of the liquid and swell slightly. A pinch of salt in the water can enhance this process, as it helps to break down the anti-nutritional compounds even further and makes the environment more conducive to enzyme activation. After this soaking time, it is important to discard the soaking water, rinse the almonds well and, if possible, remove their brown skins, which will now be looser. Although this skin contains fiber, it also concentrates a good part of the anti-nutrients and can be difficult to digest for many people. The end result is a softer almond with a milder flavor and a slightly buttery texture. Digestion is easier, the body absorbs minerals and vitamins more efficiently, and the risk of gastrointestinal discomfort is drastically reduced. For those who prefer to keep their almonds crunchy, there is an additional step that can be taken after hydration: slow drying in the oven. Simply spread the hydrated almonds on a baking sheet and place them in the oven at a low temperature, about 60 to 80 degrees Celsius, for a few hours until they are dry again, but without over-toasting. This prevents the oxidation of the healthy fats present in the seed, preserving their nutritional quality. In addition to hydration, another recommended practice is conscious portion control. Because they are dense in nutrients and calories, almonds should not be consumed in excess, even when properly prepared. The ideal amount is around 20 to 30 grams per day, which is equivalent to a medium handful, about 20 to 25 units. This portion provides an excellent amount of monounsaturated fats, vegetable proteins, fiber, and minerals, without overloading the digestive system or upsetting the daily calorie balance. Eating almonds as a snack between meals is a great option, especially when combined with fresh fruits such as apples or bananas, or with foods rich in vitamin C, which aid in iron absorption. Another interesting way to consume them is to add them to salads, breakfast bowls, smoothies, or crushed in homemade granola. The important thing is is that they are always activated and preferably peel or minimally processed. For those who want to go further, there is also the possibility of making homemade almond milk, which is infinitely more nutritious and cleaner than most industrialized versions. Just soak the almonds in the same way, rinse them well, and then blend them in a blender with filtered water, usually in a ratio of 1 cup of almonds to 3 or 4 cups of water, straining them through a fine cloth or fabric sieve. The result is a fresh, plant-based milk with no chemical additives, preservatives, or hidden sugars, ideal for those seeking a cleaner diet. The leftover pulp can be reused in recipes such as cakes, breads, or pasta, ensuring total use and avoiding waste. It is also important to consider the quality of the almonds you consume. Whenever possible, choose organic almonds, grown without the use of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. The way a food is produced directly affects its vibration, its energy charge, and of course its action in the body. Almonds stored for long periods exposed to heat or light can also oxidize and lose some of their nutritional value. Ideally, buy them in small quantities, store them in airtight containers in a cool, dark place to ensure their integrity. Even when bought roasted, check that the process was done without industrial oils or refined salt, and always read the labels carefully. The correct way to consume almonds therefore requires attention, time, and intention. It is not a matter of complicating life, but of recognizing that food, when treated with respect, responds with generosity. This approach also invites us to rethink our relationship with food in general. When we transform the preparation of food into a ritual of care, we are actually taking care of ourselves. Cooking, hydrating, choosing, preparing with your hands. All of this is part of the same gesture that nourishes not only the body, but also the consciousness and spirit. And if this seems too laborious at first glance, just remember that the effort is toward true health, which is not simply the absence of symptoms, but the presence of vitality. And it is precisely on this path of food awareness that so many questions, so much confusion, and so many myths arise. After all, if proper preparation is so simple and the benefits are so obvious, why is there still so much misinformation and so many distorted popular beliefs about almond consumption? It is in unraveling these beliefs, often repeated without foundation, that we arrive at the next point in our journey. Over the years, as almonds have gone from being a discreet supporting player in desserts to a protagonist in contemporary healthy diets, a series of myths and misinformation have accumulated around this food. It is curious to note how, even in times of information overload, or perhaps precisely because of it, so many misconceptions continue to circulate in conversations, blogs, social media, and even in ill-informed advice from health professionals. The problem with food myths is that they not only distort the truth but also generate fear, guilt, excess, or, on the other hand, unfounded rejection. And in the case of almonds, which have such vast nutritional potential, dispelling these myths becomes an essential step for anyone who wants to make more conscious choices that are truly connected to their body and the nature of food. One of the most common myths, and perhaps the most harmful, is that almonds make you fat. This statement, repeated in countless contexts, is the result of a shallow understanding of calories and nutritional composition. In fact, almonds are high in calories, especially because they are rich in fat, but it is precisely the quality of this fat that makes all the difference. Almonds contain mostly monounsaturated fats, the same ones found in olive oil, known for their protective effects on the heart, brain, and metabolism in general. In addition, they are sources of vegetable protein, fiber, antioxidants, and various minerals. In a more in-depth approach to nutrition, it is understood that nutrient-dense foods, even if they are high in calories, have the power to modulate appetite, reduce inflammation, and improve metabolism, which is the opposite of what many people associate with gaining weight. What really leads to weight gain is not the consumption of almonds themselves, but rather the overall dietary context: chronic calorie imbalance, a sedentary lifestyle, consumption of refined sugars, stress, and hormonal disorders. When consumed in moderation and properly prepared, almonds not only do not cause weight gain, they help you lose weight by providing satiety, glycemic balance, and metabolic support. Another very common myth is that almonds cannot be eaten every day, as if they were a food that is too strong or aggressive for the body. This belief has ancient roots, perhaps linked to the fact that oilseeds are indeed dense and difficult to digest when eaten raw in excess or without preparation. But the problem is not the frequency of consumption, but rather the form of consumption. When almonds are activated, soaked and prepared with care, they become lighter, more digestible, and more bioavailable, and can safely and even beneficially be part of the daily routine. In fact, regular and balanced consumption of almonds can help stabilize blood sugar levels, keep lipids under control, nourish the nervous system, and modulate the body's inflammatory response. The body is intelligent and responds very well to consistency, especially when it is done with quality. It is not every day that overloads, it is every day done wrong. There is also the myth that roasted almonds lose all their nutritional value. While it is true that intense heat can oxidize some of the fats present in almonds and degrade some of the heat-sensitive vitamins, this does not mean that the food becomes useless or harmful. Moderate roasting at low temperature temperatures can even be beneficial when done after hydration, helping to preserve the food for longer and bringing a more pleasant texture for those who prefer a light crunch. The big concern here is with the industry, which often roasts almonds at high temperatures, adding refined oils, excess salt, or even sugars. These versions should indeed be avoided, but home roasting, done with care, can retain much of the nutritional profile of almonds, as long as there is no burning or excessive darkening. Another common misconception is that industrialized almond milk is always a healthy option. The popularity of plant-based milks has grown exponentially in recent years, driven by movements such as veganism, increased lactose intolerance, and a greater search for natural options. However, many brands of almond milk available on the market contain less than 5% almonds in their composition. The rest is water, thickeners, emulsifiers, preservatives, and in many cases, added sugar. This means that, nutritionally, most of these products offer little or no real benefit, and in some cases they can even have adverse effects, such as glycemic spikes, mild inflammation, and digestive issues. The myth is reinforced because the packaging features the word almonds, suggesting something pure, natural, and healthy, but the content does not always match. Making your own plant-based milk at home, with hydrated almonds and no additives, is a much more efficient way to ensure you get the real nutrients from the seed. Finally, it is worth mentioning an idea that surrounds many diets and food groups: the myth that almonds replace nutritional supplements. Although they are very rich in nutrients, almonds, like any food, do not have the power to supply severe deficiencies or complex biochemical imbalances on their own. They complement, they do not replace. Some people believe, for example, that the magnesium or calcium present in almonds is sufficient to correct clinical deficiencies, when in fact the absorption of these minerals depends on many factors: intestinal health, the presence of cofactors, the bioavailability of the food, proper preparation, and of course biological individuality. In other words, believing that eating almonds is enough to be nourished is a reductionist thinking that ignores the complexity of the human body and the multifactorial role of functional nutrition. Most of these myths arise from misinterpreted fragments of truth and proliferate easily because they offer simple answers to complex questions. But if we really want to learn how to eat consciously and truthfully, we need to learn to question labels, be wary of ready-made answers, and listen more to our own bodies. Nutrition is not an exact science, nor is it a sequence of fixed rules. It is a constant dialogue between food and those who consume it. And this dialogue deepens when we free food from false beliefs and approach it with more respect, curiosity, and presence. And so, as we dispel myths and reveal the true role of almonds in our diet, a new question begins to emerge. How can we maintain this awareness in our daily lives? How can we turn this knowledge into a habit, without rigidity or obsession, but with lightness and pleasure? It is precisely in this transition from knowing to doing that the true path to conscious nutrition is built, and that is where the next point in our journey comes in.